Are you having a hard time letting go? And are you not getting the big gains and positive results that you're looking for? If so, you just might be a closet releaser. Now I'll explain what that is and what to do about it coming up. Welcome to the Power of Quiet. Well, our purpose here is to be free of ego limitations and live a life of love, abundance, and imperturbability. And if that's what you're interested in, make sure that you're subscribed to this channel. Now, I've got a story to share with you. Back in 2007, while I was letting go, I went through a tremendous experience of freedom. My mind dropped away, went completely quiet. And I saw my true self, who I really was. And I stayed in this wonderful state for a number of weeks. Now, during this time, I saw that I still had some ego left to get rid of. But one thing that I also saw was that the process I was using, the 6 steps and the simplicity of these steps, was all that I needed to go all the way. From the very first step to the very final step, that these 6 steps did it all. And to me, that was very reassuring, because I knew then that if I ever fell out of this wonderful state, back into the ego, got lost in it, I could just use the 6 steps and get right back there. Now, while this is reassuring, this insight was actually a double-edged sword. You see, going back to when I was a child, I always had this tendency to procrastinate and avoid work. And this led me to not really excel very well in school and be lazy at work, not do a great job. Except when I was really motivated to do it, I could really excel. But I had a problem with my motivation. So I had a tendency, a big habit for escaping, going off and doing things that I thought were pleasurable rather than doing things that I saw that was work. And these habits were still in my ego. And I used that insight as an excuse. I said, well, you know what? I can always use the 6 steps later on. Let's hang out in the world. Let's indulge in these experiences that I'm interested in the world. And I'll get to that later. And for years, I had that attitude. And so what I became was a closet releaser, where I only really released when I felt the pressure to do so. When life was handing me problems, when I felt bad, then I pulled out my releasing tools and I started doing it. Now, this is something that Lester spoke about too. And he had a big conversation with the graduates where he said, don't release to get high to release. You see, Lester pointed out that us humans, we have a tendency to avoid work and seek pleasure. So this releasing, in our mind, it looks like it's work. And we procrastinate, we put it off, we escape from it. And the only time that we use it is when our back is against the wall, when we feel crummy. So we feel bad, and then we release until we feel good. And then once we feel good, we're not so motivated. And then we stop. And what Lester pointed out is doing it this way is a long, drawn-out process. And that's what I discovered for myself. Now, if you're familiar with the 6 steps, you know that in there, one of the steps is to make releasing constant. Now, that's not just put in there just because like an extra step was needed to give it an even number. There's a reason for that. When you make releasing constant, You generate massive momentum. And that's what takes you beyond the realm of being a closet releaser to really succeeding at it. Now, here's the experience of being a closet releaser. I mean, it's not so bad. You see, we've got a skill here that we can use when our back is against the wall. But see, what we experience when we do it this way is we release a little bit and we know that we feel better. And we know that it works to some degree. But what happens is our big gains, our goals that we're looking for, they seem to elude us. And we also seem to have to release on the same stuff over and over and over again, kind of dig ourselves out of the same hole over and over again. Now, here's the thing. It's not bad because, like in my case, I saw that I was steadily moving in a positive direction overall, but that direction was like this while it was moving up. It had a lot of ups and downs in it. But when it really clicked into me to make releasing constant, that's when the ups and downs went away and it became a straight line going upwards. And it was like one of these things where it generates momentum and has a sharp curve that increases as you go along the axis there. So how do you have the momentum and the motivation to make releasing constant? That's a good question. And unfortunately, there's not a simple answer to this because the motivation isn't something that is a formula that can just be handed to you on a silver platter. That's something that you got to find for yourself. Now, talking about motivation, one way that we can look at it is the carrot versus the stick. I think that analogy should be obvious. The carrot is the prize, the stick is the punishment. And when you think about a donkey pulling a cart, you stick a carrot in front of it, it's motivated by the carrot, so it pulls the cart. Or it could be whipped and it could pull the cart the same way. Now Lester, when he went through his transformation, he used both the carrot and the stick. First, it was the stick. It was the heart attack and facing death within weeks that motivated him to let go of all of his non-loving feelings. But once he did that and he cured his body and he got into a healthy, prosperous, positive place, then his motivation turned more towards the carrot. He said to himself, you know what? If a piece of the pie tastes this good, I'm not going to stop until I get the whole pie. You see, he was chasing now the positive and going for the goodness of it. Now that's something that we can use for ourselves because we are in an ego right now. We're motivated a lot by our ego. And this carrot and stick thing can help us discriminate and ask ourselves, well, what does it cost us? Now we can apply this in both ways, like the stick. What is it costing me to not release? Look at the problems that I have. Look at all the hard feelings that I have. Look at the density of the ego that I have to carry around with me and this nagging voice in my head every single day, day in and day out. What would it be worth to let that go? And when you start asking yourself questions like that, that can get you into deciding to release constantly. And by the same token, you could use a carrot. Well, what is it costing me to not do this? I mean, because look at what I achieve when I let go. I feel lighter. I feel more imperturbable. I get to the place where nothing bothers me. I feel on top of the world. I'm connected with the love that's inside of me, and that love is flowing, and it's reflecting back. And it just feels good to love. And what would it be worth to be in this loving place all the time? And asking yourself that can help you then be motivated. Well, you know what? Let me just roll up my sleeves, put my head down, and just bring up and let go of all my non-loving feelings. So let me ask you this and pose a question to you. And let's do some releasing on this here. So whether you're more motivated by the carrot or the stick right now, let me ask you, well, what is it worth to you to get to the place where you're totally imperturbable, where you're not being pulled around like a puppet on strings by your ego, and you no longer have problems and struggles in your life, and you're in a place where you're filled with love, you're experiencing abundance and happiness and joy all the time? What would that be worth to you? And would it be worth it to you to use the method and let go so you can be in that place? And what answer do you get? Are you really willing to do what it takes? Now, just notice your answer. It could be yes or no. It doesn't matter. But just look at, by asking yourself the question, see if it brings up some resistance. Notice any resistance to letting go? Now that's your ego resisting. And that's something that you can take care of right now and get yourself moving right now. So measure that resistance on a scale of 0 to 10. 10 being the most resistant, 0 being the least resistant. Just see where you're at. And wherever that resistance is, whether it's a 2, a 5, an 8, or even beyond 10, just notice where you're at. And notice if you've been avoiding that resistance. Like when it comes up, you don't like it, you want to go away, you push against it, you fight with it. And for lack of better words, what you're doing is you're saying no to that resistance. You see that? And when you say no to that resistance, does that make that resistance go away? No. So since saying no doesn't work, then we've got to do something completely different. So right now, look at that resistance and say yes to it. Just say yes to it. And say yes to that resistance even more. And say yes to that resistance even more. And say yes to it even more. And say yes to it even more. Say yes to it even more. It's that simple. Just YES. That's all. Because you know that saying no to that resistance doesn't make it go away. In fact, it just builds it up, makes it even stronger. So could you say yes to it now so it can leave? And could you say yes to it even more? And could you say yes to it even more? And could you say yes to it even more? And even more. And even more. And even more. And even more. Now measure yourself again on that scale of 0 to 10. And see if you moved. See if you went down. Now, if there's any left, maybe you're at an 8 and now you're at a 5. Wherever you're at with resistance now, just look at that resistance. Wherever you're at, look right at it and say, I love you, resistance. Try it out. I love you, resistance. I really love you. I love you unconditionally. I just love you. I really, really love you. I love you. And I love you if you stay, and I love you if you leave. I love you either way. I love you unconditionally. And measure yourself again. See where you are now. And if you're even lower now, notice here, you're moving in a positive direction. And now you've got some momentum going. So this is the momentum you generate when you start releasing. The key is to keep releasing. And this momentum just compounds on itself like a rolling snowball. Just collects and gets bigger and bigger as it rolls along. And this is very powerful. This is what can manifest your big goals and even enable you to go free. So now that you have some momentum going here, some energy moving, invite up the rest of the resistance. Let go of pushing it down. And just allow it to arise now. Allow all of it to come up. And just get out of the way. Allow it to pass through. Notice it wants to leave. In fact, if you want to check for yourself, you can even ask the resistance. Ask it. Resistance, do you want to leave? What does it say? It says yes, doesn't it? And all it needs is your permission now. You just need to get out of the way, let it leave, and it'll just leave. All right, so let go of holding it down. Allow that resistance to arise, and just let it pass on through. Let it leave. And let it leave even more. And 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 just open up all the way, as open as you can. Just relax into it and just let it all pass through. And notice what you're experiencing now. And notice how that resistance came up. Just when you asked yourself, what would it take to release constantly? And guess what that is? That's your ego resisting. It doesn't want you to release. It wants you to procrastinate. It wants you to escape. Go and be distracted by other things so you don't let go of that negativity. And that's why I said, ultimately, it's up to you. You got to motivate yourself to say, you know what? I'm going for it. I'm going to make this constant. I'm not going to save any of this negativity for later. I'm letting it go right on the spot, right as I see it. Now, one thing that can really help you with this and stay on track and keep up the momentum is to join in on the classes. Seriously. Because there is another thing that is very helpful to keep you on track, and that is having a level of accountability. Because I think it's obvious that oftentimes when we're left to our own devices, we slack off. But when we're held accountable, when we're in a class where there are class times for us to show up at, when there are homework assignments to do, and when we're reminded to do those homework assignments, and oftentimes when we have a partner to work with, and we have an accountability to help our partner and allow ourselves to be helped by our partner, that really helps us to stay on track and get the most out of this and build up the momentum where we get bigger than the ego overall. And that's why I've set up these classes to be super easy, super affordable. And the reason why I hold them is to help you, me, all of us reach our ultimate goals. And in a couple of days, I'm going to be letting you know about a new class that's scheduled for December, a goals class called the Conscious Creation Master Course. And once I post it, I'll add a link in the description below. But keep an eye out. This is a huge course that is about enabling you to get your goals. It's very powerful. And it's a lot of fun. So keep an eye out. You're really going to love this one. All right? So Anyway, if there is anything that I missed here about motivation, if you have any ideas or any insights about having the motivation to release constantly, any tips on this, leave me a message in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if there's anything that I can do to help you, anything else just that you see that would help you, also leave a comment below. I'd love to know. All right? So till next time, happy releasing, and I'll see you later.